Hello friends, Pat here, and today we're gonna answer, I guess the question in the title, and obviously why you clicked this video is, did your ISP buy enough bandwidth? Now, these words might kind of just go straight over your head, so I want to kind of unpack the question and kind of understand why ISPs and basically any news media outlet are kind of talking about slow NBN speeds, and what has it got to do with bandwidth and why the ISPs potentially have not bought enough. Now, part of this talk comes from actual personal experience and actually personally experiencing the difference of multiple ISPs on the NBN. And obviously, a lot of these come from Google. You can Google this question and get the answers kind of in a roundabout way after you do a bit of research. But NBN Co has a great video on about what bandwidth is to an ISP provider, your internet service provider, and how it works. And I'll link that below. It's a really great analogy, and I'll share it quickly with you. So what bandwidth is, it literally is the width of the band. And if you think of the band as your cable, and just like in that video that I linked, it's really a highway of information. And let's say cars going across this highway are the bits of data. So let's say you're watching a YouTube video, it's sending you a frame by frame to your computer, and that's one of those cars in one of the lanes that is dedicated to your connection. Now imagine this lane getting filled out with more people. If you have one lane, more people, it means traffic is slow. That means your speed at home is slow. Now add a second lane, you've got 2 lanes, it'll be a little bit faster. Add another lane, 3 lanes, it'll be a lot faster, and so on and so forth. And that is what bandwidth is. Your ISP buys a certain amount of bandwidth and then spreads it to their customers. Obviously, it's as if they get it from this big repository of bandwidth and then they pass it on. So let's say they've got 100 customers and they buy enough bandwidth for 50. It means that at any one time, if there's only about 50 people logged in and actually doing very heavy workloads, there'll be enough for only 50 of the customers. Now, this is a very crude simplification, so just take it with a grain of salt. Mainly what I'm trying to get at is bandwidth allows the ISP to provide higher speeds at times of high traffic, meaning people using it, so between 5 to 9 in evenings. And if they don't have enough bandwidth during those peak times, you're gonna get slow speed. So what you may have noticed is that when you go on a website that provides plans for you, what you will see in little writing underneath the actual speed will say during peak times, instead of 100, you might get 84. And it's very specific. I do bid you to look this up. It's changed in the last 2 months. This has come in recently because of the government kind of stepping in and saying, well, look, NBN Co is responsible for providing the service of the fiber, but the ISPs are providing the service to their customers and promising speeds that are unable to be attained because they don't buy enough bandwidth. Now, there's a few reasons why ISPs don't buy enough bandwidth, and it usually is kind of like it's a chicken or an egg situation. Do you have enough customers to warrant purchasing a whole heap of bandwidth? Or do you have very little customers and the very little amount of bandwidth you have provides for them? Basically, at the moment, they want a very weird balance. They want less bandwidth, which means less costs to them, and more customers. Now, this actually works out okay most of the time because you have a large pool of customers that don't always log in at the same time. Let's say about 80 to maybe 60 to 80% actually log in at the same time, and therefore you only really need to have enough bandwidth to support that 60 to 80%. But during peak times, that number obviously rises. Everybody in the evening starts watching things like Netflix, and Netflix, let's just say that accounts for a very substantial percentage of all internet traffic. It's huge. I mean, now, you know, Netflix has been huge for a while in the US and UK, Japan, but in Australia, well, it took a while for Netflix to even reach here, but when it did, it really, really strained the ISPs. Now, I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate in this regard. I'm kind of thinking, well, the ISPs are just taking their sweet ass time to adjust. It's a slow moving vehicle, and they're gonna buy more bandwidth. They're gonna get their speeds up during peak times, and you're not going to be affected too much sooner or later. But for now, the best thing you can do to get faster speeds, and this is where my personal experiences come in, is to change to a different provider, one of the non-mainstream providers of NBN. The cool thing is about the NBN is to be a provider of NBN, you just have to open up a business, sign up to be a reseller of NBN Co's existing infrastructure, and sell it on to customers. And you, as a potentially small, medium, large business that provides NBN Co infrastructure and to your subscribers, might have bought enough bandwidth and don't have enough customers to fill it. So when new customers come on board, they get to experience the highest level of performance even during peak times. And what happened to me, I went from INET to Aussie broadband on the actual moment of peak usage, and from there I was able to experience the real difference of going with a smaller provider who doesn't have as many customers but has a potentially a larger amount of bandwidth for its current customer base, which will grow in the future, and you might have to change again, but that's the way of life. But what we're hoping is that obviously companies think of this and just buy more bandwidth for more customers and so on and so forth. But let me tell you what happened. I was sick and tired of INET. The speeds during peak times were atrocious, and it was the time I used it the most. I got home from work and I used the internet, you know, gaming, watching YouTube, watching Netflix, everything I could think of, I really couldn't do. So I signed up to Aussie broadband, and within 15 minutes, I was able to log into their service, and holy crap, ho and behold, I had full speed during peak times. Now I'm still currently with Aussie broadband, and because now in this house we don't have fiber to the premises, that has kind of changed in the speed regard, so I kind of get the maximum my line can afford because we're on copper, and you can view a little bit of video that I did about that in the thing below. But let's get back to bandwidth, and INET just didn't have enough bandwidth because they had so many customers, and because they're so giant, they're probably not spending enough money on it. I can understand they might have large overheads, but now because there's businesses coming out who are not so big with huge overheads, they're able to afford larger parts of the bandwidth that NBN Co provides, more lanes for the traffic, and they provide better speeds. So guys, the best thing you can do right now if you're getting terrible speeds during peak hours is simply just change to a smaller provider, a different provider. Basically nobody that's like huge. Whoever advertises on TV, that's who you don't go with. They spend their money on marketing and advertisements on TV and radio, and instead of buying bandwidth for you, other customers, they end up spending it on frivolous advertising to get more customers, which in turn kind of, it's supposed to be a good cycle. It's supposed to get more customers, more bandwidth, better performance, but it doesn't. So go with a company that's not necessarily mainstream, and you'd be very pleasantly surprised at the price and performance. That's really my suggestion about bandwidth. But that is really it, and that video that I linked below will give you a very nice and visual explanation, but I wanted to share my story with you and also give you a quick rundown of what it is. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate the time. Please subscribe if you enjoyed my videos. If you want to see more basically talk and explanation videos, I've got a few coming up. Please subscribe. I've also got a gaming channel there with lots of gaming gear and reviews there, but I've also got a tech side of things. So like, dislike, let me know why, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks very much for watching.